I don't think I'll ever forget the feeling of being stuck. But at the time, I couldn't even find the words to describe what I was feeling. I remember feeling like I was completely alone. And that's one of the reasons why I started the roller coaster and created the journaling formula. Along the way, I've been able to connect with so many women who have felt exactly like I did. And today's guest, Michelle Woods of Woods Life Coaching, knows what it feels like to be stuck. And now she is also helping midlife moms find purpose and design their path forward. This episode is heartfelt, it is raw, and we speak our truths. We share our stories and how we wrote our next chapters. If you hear this yourself in our stories, then I invite you to head over to my website and grab your copy of the Empowered Midlife Mom Journal and share your story with me. Pop me an email. I know that you're going to find a lot of gems in this conversation, so buckle up. This is going to be a crazy ride. This is the Roller Coaster Podcast. We are here to help you be empowered and renew your sense of purpose as a midlife mom. This is your time to redefine and reclaim your power as a woman. Just because our kids are getting older doesn't mean that our lives still don't have crazy twists, turns, ups and downs. And that's not to mention what our hormones are doing. We're navigating helping our kids plan their next chapters while quietly wondering, what the heck does my next chapter look like? My name is Lucy Q, wife, mom, podcaster, and journaling mentor. This is a crazy time in your life, but you are not alone. So I'm inviting you to throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. Roller coaster. I wanna ride. Roller coaster. Life is like.
Welcome to the roller coaster, Michelle.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So we were chatting before I hit record because we've both been what we call stuck.
Yep.
And quite honestly, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found was pulling myself out of that hole took such emotional strength. It was more than anything I'd faced as a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the hardest part was I didn't know what being stuck meant, which then left me to feeling like I was completely alone. And I felt guilty because I had all these great things in my life, but something felt so wrong and I was lost.
Mm-hmm.
Can you maybe share with me what you feel being stuck means?
Yeah. And I really appreciate what you just said right there, which was you could identify with how you felt, but didn't make the connection that was being stuck, and you felt alone in that as well. And I think that's the challenge initially, is that feeling stuck. Just the word itself feels abstract. And so when I work with clients to like make it concrete, we identify what the feelings are. So what are the feelings about being stuck? So the feelings that I had when I was stuck, I was resentful. I was angry because my life wasn't turning out the way I wanted it to. I felt overwhelmed by any kind of action it would take to overcome just these feelings. I felt lost in a way. I felt directionless. So all of these things really culminated into my own personal story with being stuck, and I think with a lot of women. So it's important to pinpoint what those feelings are, and if you identify with those feelings, then you really need to ask yourself, okay, is this am I stuck in this, or am I moving out of it? And if you're not moving out of it, it's part of our journey. Every single part of our lives represent a different part of womanhood, different stage in our lives. And so we have to normalize that we all go through different things at different times. but it's important to identify when we are stuck. Do we need help to get unstuck? What do we need to get unstuck? Is it just a mind shift change? Is it professional help? What is it? And be daring enough to take the step towards whatever that is.
And certainly there's a lot of those feelings that I can relate to. But I think at the time, I didn't even have the capacity to put words to how I was feeling. Like, quite
Mhm.
honestly, the easiest way to put it is I think I just felt like a big loser. Like
Mhm.
I felt, and I don't know why, I just felt like a personal, I don't know, like I had done something wrong. I hadn't,
Mhm.
and you can tell I still struggle with trying to describe where I was and what I went through. I was as rock bottom as you can get.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember feeling like I just wanted to run away.
Yeah. And that's another great emotion to identify with, is that feeling of, like the shit hits the fan, you're like, you just want to give up on it. And then, like, there has to be something better than this moment that I'm in. And maybe that's the question that we ask ourselves when we're really in that place. But as you were talking, the kind of the picture I was getting in my mind is literally like having a weight attached to myself that's pulling me under, like, just not being able to put any word to it, but like that is how I feel. And like, it's gonna drown me if I don't get rid of whatever this weight is.
Yeah, and for me, I described it as scraping the bottom of shit barrel. Like I
Mhm.
was, that's how far down I was. But and it was one, it was something that similar to what I can remember Les Brown saying, that I knew that I could, because I felt so desperate and lost. I knew I was at the point where, if I looked down, I would just drown in
Mhm.
my own emotional shit.
Yeah.
Or I could look up and just try and find the possibilities.
Mhm.
And that's the only thing that I could cling to at that point in time, was just, as you said, what else is there out there?
Mhm.
What are those possibilities? And that just ever so slowly, it just started to be able to turn things around. What what was it that you did once you sort of acknowledged, okay, wait a second, things aren't right? What was it that you did to start to turn things around for yourself?
Well, in my own story, I was faced with an ultimatum. So, I had been stuck for a long time, didn't know that I was stuck. I just knew that I was not happy with the direction that my life was. Like, I was happy in my relationship, I was happy with my family and being a mom and all that stuff, but I wasn't living out the dream that I had attached to as a young adult. And I held on to that for a long, long time, many, many years. And by holding on to that, that in itself produced those feelings of resentment and anger, being miserable, all of those things. And I held on to that for way too long. And as a result, I got to a point where I made decisions and I did things that almost ruined my marriage. So it came to a head where I was given an ultimatum that I either get my shit together and figure out what it was that I wanted, or I was gonna like disrupt my entire life. And that is actually what pushed me into really trying to identify, okay, well, who am I right now? And who the fuck do I want to be in the future? Because I couldn't go on the way I was. I could, but I would be losing a lot of things in the process. And I didn't want to lose what I had. I loved my family. I loved the unit we had spent years creating. Um, so I had to get real with myself, and I got help. I got professional help. And then I also, at the same time, it coincided with going through a coaching academy. And in that process, like, that just took me onto my own personal transformation journey, where I really had to start asking myself some really hard questions and get my own clarity, and like you were just saying, like, get out of the shit barrel. Like, it was like a rope was thrown to me, and I had the choice of climbing the rope and figuring out where it took me, or just staying in the shit. And I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to be a different person. I wanted to get back to who I was, at the core, and I had lost sight of who that person was. And so I grabbed hold of that ladder and I climbed out, and feel like I've been climbing out since then. It's a process. It's a long process. But I think when you make the effort to do it, and you take those first steps to, like, hey, you know what? I don't want to stay down here anymore. I want to get out of this. Then the universe hears you, and things come your way, and you're able to, you can get out of it.
Well, I did disrupt my life. I did come pretty close to blowing my marriage apart.
Hmm.
So
Here.
I was like, if there is a word for how to screw it up really bad, I'm going to take that one.
Yep.
But, for me, as I look back, I don't know if I ever did have a sense of myself, who I was. I met my husband when I was 18. He's 5 years older. And I went from my parents' house and I moved in with him. And then it was about like a year later, we got engaged, we got married. A couple of years later, we were having kids. So I never really understood what it was to learn who I was. And I think that was, the ball and chain that I'd been lugging around for, my entire life.
Hmm.
I can even remember questioning, my own worth as a mother, just because I was so disconnected from who I am, what I wanted. And, you talk about that lifeline. I, I like to think, and this could be really woohoo for some of the listeners out there, but I like to think that it was my future self coming back to pull me out of that barrel, that the person throwing that lifeline is your future self, the person that's been through it, figured out a few things, and is then going back and saying, okay, wait a second, you're not alone. I'm
That is
here with
freaking
you.
amazing. I love that. I absolutely love that. I don't know if it's an analogy or yeah,
Uh,
whatever it
I
is.
don't know. Don't ask me
I'm
the
with you on
fancy
that
word.
train. I'll
But
go with
yeah,
you on that woo-woo train. So yes, the idea that your future self would be throwing you that lifeline, that's powerful.
and you know, so often you hear people saying, oh, imagine you're reading your own obituary. What do you want it to say? I'm like, well, that's a little bit morbid. What would the person, because there's so many seasons of our life to go through. How can you possibly sum it up in a couple of paragraphs? It's like, I don't know if you've ever heard the poem called The Dash, I think it's called. And
I
it
don't think
talks
so.
about, like, if you look at your gravestone, most gravestones, they have, the year you're born, dash, the year that you died. And that little dash, that little line is like the total of your life. You're not just the day you're born, you're not just the day you die. You have this entire existence of different versions of yourself and different seasons of who you are that are encompassed in this little dash.
Mm.
So I like to look at it, well, you know, what would the me that I am in 10 years come back and tell the me of me today?
Yeah.
That's who I'm measuring myself against. That's who I'm turning to for advice is, okay, imagine that I've checked these boxes and I've done 1, 2, and 3. Who is that person? And what advice is she going to tell me today?
Yeah, that's really powerful. And that's a coaching exercise. That's a coaching approach that I've used, with clients in sessions when they do get stuck, just in their ability to think outside of their situation, is to imagine, envision who that future person is, and then what would that future person, that version of you, say to you now. And that moment of, I don't want to say inspiration, but it's a moment of clarity often. Um, because when I ask the question, I ask it in a way that is an immediate response. So you don't think about it. It's just you say whatever like comes to your mind immediately. Um, and when you think about who that person is, I mean, that is what we're aspiring to be, is the person that we want, that woman that, um, at the end of the dash, right, is the one that we can celebrate and say, yep, I did exactly what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be. I feel completely whole on the inside and know that when I leave this earth, I was the best mom, I was the best wife or partner, and I lived a life that was fulfilling. And I know that I want that for myself, and I know, and I'm sure the listeners, that's that's what we aspire to be. And sometimes it's just so difficult to tap into who that is right now in the moment that we're struggling, the moment that we can't see out of the muck, and we don't have or see that there is a ladder, or there is a lifeline that's right here in our space. Um, but that's also normal, and we all go through it at different times in our lives.
And I think that's what's never taught to us. I don't know why. There's so many valuable lessons that we should be learning in school and we're not. Now you mentioned clarity,
Hmm.
and I find that's that's one of those words. I don't know if I want to say there's a lot of myths or misconceptions about it, but it's one of those things that people are searching for. Can you maybe explain, what clarity it is and how you went about finding it for yourself?
Yeah. So clarity for me is the moments, I call them windows of opportunity. Because if you say the word clarity, that feels really broad, right? But and it also is like an intuitive hit. That's I kind of partner those two together. But windows of opportunity are the things that pass in and out of our day that we wouldn't necessarily be open to unless we're open to it. If we're searching, if we have an open mind, these windows of opportunity come into our lives, and it's just a simple, expressive moment where something clicks for us. And it could be inspiring, it could be, uh, you know, a moment of clarity about something simple. It's just something. But if we don't capture it, if we don't hold on to it in that moment, it's going to disappear. And we won't even remember that it happened. And so what I do with my clients when it comes to clarity is to look and be open to those windows of opportunity and to capture them somehow, whether it's taking a note in their phone or writing it down, because the next time we come together and we talk, I want to know what those windows of opportunity are, because over time those become the dots that are being connected for the client. And like as a broad scope, that's the clarity.
And I find that, you know, when I want to say about, a myth about clarity is that it's not something that you can, I don't know if the right word is search for it. It's something that it happens when you least expect it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
That's
think
the window of
that's,
opportunity.
yeah,
Yep.
and it's the difference between, the masculine and the feminine energy, because so often, we exist solely in that masculine energy when it comes to goals and strategy and getting things done. As mothers,
Mhm.
it surprised me to learn that, as a mother, even though you're nurturing and you're raising children, you still have to have a very strong hold on these masculine energies, because that's what gets shit done when you're a mother and you've got kids and dinner and all this stuff going on. So, for me, clarity happens when you engage in that feminine energy and you surrender.
Mhm, mm,
that's when that's when it sort of comes forward. You can't force it.
yeah,
You do those things that you need to do, where you're working with a coach, you're learning about yourself, you're doing the inner work, you're journaling, you're meditating, you're doing all of these things. And then over time, these little nuggets start to reveal themselves. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there we go.
yep. You're exactly right, and I love that you used surrender, because that is exactly the process, is surrendering to, um, all of it's surrendering to that weight, right? Letting that weight go and surrendering to the flow. Life is flow, energy is flow, and I often think of a river, and just sometimes we hold on to the bank and we're holding on for dear life, but really the flow wants to take us for a reason, but we're holding on to something. And when we surrender to that power, yeah, I think clarity blooms. Those windows of opportunity are just, they're going to naturally come into our lives.
And for me, the pivotal day where it all came to a head and I was at my lowest low, um, it was through surrendering that I was really the first step of pulling myself out, because I literally called out to the universe, just please, please, just give me one thing that I can do right now to start to help myself. And it was such a raw emotion that I was experiencing at the time. And I got quiet, I got still, and I started to think about, well, if I don't want to be this person, then who do I want to be? And I started to think about the attributes that that person had. And that then led me into creating, it's now a whole journaling formula that I've created that I practice every day. And I've done this every day for 5 years now. And it's amazing. I mean, if you had told this me in the moments before I surrendered that this is what you need to do, I wouldn't have believed you, and I wouldn't have believed where I was. But it was I think that the pivotal point was that surrendering.
And and it's amazing that you are able to identify that, because that's part of the change. You identified that surrender was the trajectory shift for you. And the next time that you're in a space where you feel like you need help again, you have something to rely on. You have a system that works for you. And now you can use that system to build on and refer back to when it gets tough again.
and and it does. I mean, I don't want anyone to think that I went through this once and life is you know perfect. No,
Mhm.
I still struggle, I still have challenges. Every time you reach a new level, you're going to reach a new level of challenges, and then you add to that good old hormones, because they are going to fuck you up like you don't believe. I mean,
Amen.
I recently had one day, and I hadn't had a day that bad in, I'm going to say, at least 5 years. And even my husband said, I haven't seen you this bad in years. I couldn't stop crying. It was just one of those days where I started to feel like that big loser again. I started to, shut down and all of these things, but he could recognize it in me. And it's like you said, I had those tools that I could go back to. And I think that day as well, there was a certain amount of surrender where it's just like, okay, Here I am. This is what I'm dealing with. This isn't forever. This is just a moment in time.
And I I love how you pointed that out, because so much of what coaching can be is a way to help you create the system for yourself. And that's what you did. And amazing, you were able to figure that out on your own, which is awesome. Sometimes we can't, which is okay too. But I really believe in the power of structures, and structure means something different for everybody. But when we find something that works for us and then we can apply it, and then when things get tough again, we know that that's something we can fall back on. It makes our transformation that much more concrete. We can start seeing the progress from the moment we started the journey, and in the segments that they come in. And that's part of the design process too. I mean, that's what we're doing with our lives.
And that's what you're doing, because you as well transcended your own personal crisis, and you're now helping women who are stuck to redesign their life. So can you maybe share a bit about how you help women and what that looks like?
Yeah. So exactly what we're talking about, right, is exactly what I help women to do. So it's, when you are identifying with those feelings of just being stuck, whether the emotions that we have talked about, or you can't even identify the emotions yet, you just know that wherever it is, you need a rope, you need something to pull yourself out of it. That's where I meet my clients, in those places. And I help them stop fantasizing about the life that they wanted in the past, because that's my story, right? And so my coaching is part of my story. And that's how clients, they usually identify with the same story. So it's just helping them get past what they're fantasizing about, what they're daydreaming about, which is the life that they want instead of the life that they want now, and helping them moving forward to find fulfillment. And it's a process, and a lot of that process we talked about today. And it's a journey that I go with them on. We partner together, and the goal is for them to find fulfillment, to get out of the shit pile and to find happiness.
And I think, the more we as women step forward and share our stories like we are sharing today, it goes back to the old proverb of each one teach one.
Mm.
Is that, I look back 5 years ago, I didn't find anyone talking about these things. It wasn't as common. Since I've started to focus more around, the segment of midlife moms, because that's essentially, that's who I am. That's, I know what I know.
Yeah, me too. My grace.
I was gonna say, we basically have a PhD from our own lives. And if I've learned something, if I've created some tools or have some resources that can help the next person, then that's what I'm going to do, because, I can very quickly tap back into those feelings, those painful feelings of that day, and know that if there's anything that I can do to prevent somebody from either getting that far stuck or, helping them get out of it, then that's what I'm going to do. And that's the whole purpose of what we're doing today.
Yeah. And I am with you on that journey. If I can help women avoid the pain that I caused my family, my husband specifically, and the pain that I caused myself. I mean, I know it was part of my journey, and I know I needed to go through what I went through. But if I would have let go of my dreams when it was time to let go of them, because I realized through my own journey that those dreams were for a time and a place in my life. If I would have let go of all that I had, years before, I would have been a completely different outcome. So, yeah,
But
helping women and empowering women is definitely the calling.
yeah, and hindsight's always 2020. But I can clearly say that I had to go through what I had to go through to be able to share what I'm sharing. And I couldn't have done this 10, 15 years ago because that's not where I was in my life. This is where I am. And this is what I've learned. And this is the wisdom I'm sharing with people and connecting with people like yourself so that, collectively we can all, work together and, really change the story of what midlife women are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without a doubt, I know that that's my purpose, is to share my story in the hopes of empowering and helping other women. And we definitely share that.
Now, as we wrap up, Michelle, do you have any final words of wisdoms that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Absolutely. I would say, you are not the only one. Uh, we all go through our own shit. And it's important to know that you are not alone in the process. You're not alone in the shit. And I think collectively as women, we understand and we can empathize with what you're going through. And I want everyone to know that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Even though you might be standing in front of the tunnel and it's pitch dark and you can't see the end, you can't see any light whatsoever. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And sometimes you need a friend, sometimes you need an accountability partner, sometimes you need someone to walk through that with you. That person is there somewhere, it exists. But just know that you just got to go, you just got to walk through it, and we'll be there with you for sure.
I'll give you an amen on that one. And Michelle, where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Well, I think the easiest is my website, which is woodslifecoaching.com. And I'm always open to a conversation. You can email me at michelle@woodslifecoaching.com. And you can find me on Twitter and Facebook. We'll probably put those in the show notes, I'm sure. Yeah, and that's how you reach me.
To connect with Michelle, make sure you check out the show notes. I will have all of her links in there. And Michelle, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
If you're looking to take a deep dive and really get clear on who you are and what you want, and to start living life on your terms, then I invite you to grab a copy of my Empowered Midlife Mom Journal. It is the very first teeny tiny baby step that you can take to begin your journey of self-exploration. I promise you, it's painless and takes just a few minutes a day. Get your copy at therollercoasterpodcast.com/midlife mom journal, or check out the show notes for a link. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creator.